Oh, by the way,
Yes.
the Microsoft competitive product to Stadia is Project xCloud, which is going to launch in September 2020, and it will be part of the. It appears like that it will be part of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Excuse me, say that 10 times fast. So this is Microsoft literally putting Xbox blades into data centers so that people can play Xbox games remotely on phones and tablets.
All right. I'm glad you let people know about that from yesterday because we've moved on.
I'm assuming people listen all week long because why wouldn't you?
Mike Rose, everybody. Mike Rose is with us. He's got a podcast which he told us about Monday. Really quickly, say the name again.
It is the Aftershow. You can find it at aftershowpodcast.com.
Or you can follow him on Twitter at Mike T Rose, at Mike T Rose on Twitter. We did also talk earlier this week about exactly where you can find him at certain points of day. So if you're really looking to do that,
If I find any of your listeners stalking me at the artisanal mayonnaise place, I'll know what happens.
yeah, right. You've fallen through a wormhole though, because as we said, the mayonnaise place is closed, and really probably the best thing that could have happened to it. Right. Let's talk about something exciting. This is not exactly what we did last week, but Allison Sheridan and I last week on Thursday did a show called How We Know We Live in the Future, because I had something happen. And what's weird is the thing that I had happen happened around my podcast, right? Already having a podcast, listening to a podcast, doing podcasts, you would think you would understand at that point that you live in the future. Because I didn't go to a radio station to talk to people. I just, sat in my house and did my show. And then, and people can get that. And honestly, that's a way that you should know you live in the future. How I knew I lived in the future was something happened in my workflow, and I was able to use my phone to go ahead and publish my show. And that's insane to me because I'm used to my Mac doing that, right? I don't think I've ever used my phone to publish my show. I think one time I used my phone to change the published time. Oh, in fact, it was, golly, 2 or 3 years ago this week, because I was actually at the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas, couple in already at the Masquerade Bar, hanging out with all my Star Trek pals, and I checked my phone and realized, hey, that show that was supposed to post an hour ago didn't, because I had done some goofy time zone thing. And so I was able to go in and change that. But actually being able to post my show, which was on my Mac, but I had no internet connection except for my cellular connection, doing that through my phone, that told me that we live in the future.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
a bunch of other stuff should tell you that all the time. And that's what we talked about last week. So I'm really glad I just did like our last week's 15 minutes in that minute and a half. There was something that happened on the earnings call. Did you listen to the earnings call this week?
I did not.
Okay.
As was very consistent in the years that I was writing for TUAW, I almost always have a meeting during the earnings calls. I don't know
Nice.
why.
All right.
It's an odd time of day, like 4 to 5 p.m. Or 4:30, 5 o'clock in the East Coast time.
Yeah.
I don't know why I should have a meeting, but inevitably I always do. It's
Again,
weird.
not to bring up, the before times, but normally, I think I missed last year's earnings call, third quarter earnings call, and I missed the one the year before that too, because usually I'm in Vegas doing, the STLV thing. This year, STLV was supposed to be this coming week, or the week that people are hearing this now. So I was actually going to be able to catch the earnings call. But now, of course, they could have an earnings call every day. And be like, well, I'm not in Vegas, so that's fine. I will tell you the thing that was most interesting to me, not the most interesting, because there was a ton interesting. We talked earlier this week about, the numbers and the money and things like that. Somebody asked Tim Cook the question about the Apple Silicon vertical, what that's going to mean for them, what that's going to do for them. And Tim Cook said something that was kind of amazing. It was basically, we're very excited about it because it basically gives us one platform across all of our devices with which we can work. I'm not going to announce anything today, but it gives us some exciting places we can go. It unleashes innovation, he said. And then later, somebody asked him something else about Apple Silicon, and he said that the thing that they really like about it, was the fact that it lets them create the whole product, ... and whole new products. Time to play. What do you see coming? Do you have any ideas? Do you have any thoughts? Is there a thing? Is this one of those? And I may have asked you this the last time you were on, because I know I have mentioned on this the Corning world of glass thing, where they have basically you wake up and everything in your life is covered in glass, but it's all screens and you can, change stuff and do stuff and see information. And, you're a glass maker. It's sort of like you're a hammer, everything's a nail. You're a glass maker. Well,
Yeah,
every problem can be solved with glass, it turns out, if you're
it's
Corning,
true.
because, they have a vested interest in that. I'm wondering, when you think about Apple Silicon and the other things that might lead to, what kinds of things lead to mind?
Yeah, it's so tricky to try to figure that out. I think
Do it anyway. Do it anyway.
I'm
Hey,
gonna
by the
try. I
way,
try.
by
I
the way, Mike
try.
Rose owns like this much Apple stock. So anything he says has nothing to do with that.
Right.
It's because
Right.
some guy called him and said, "Let's talk about Apple." So
Yes. Thank you for giving me the disclaimer. Yes. Not intended as investment advice. I think that the the instructive thing here is to look at what has happened since Apple got the ARM instruction set license and architectural license back in 2006, I think.
if you're talking about when they bought PA Semi, that was 2008.
Not when they bought PSME. They
Okay.
actually licensed the architectures to be able to design their own processors with the ARM instruction set
Okay.
earlier.
Okay.
They bought actually the talent to do it when they bought PA Semi. I think, and it's all a long time ago. But going back to the previous decade, when Apple really came into its own as as a a system on a chip vendor,
Hmm.
with one customer, that being Apple, um, the pace of innovation of that processor architecture and those processors is enormous. And the fact that we can have, video telephones on our wrists as I gesture to my Apple Watch, and not only video telephones, but now EKGs and potentially pulse ox monitors and exercise trackers and weather forecasts. Like the Dick Tracy-fication of Apple's product lines is entirely dependent on the ARM license and the PA Semi know-how in creating the A series processors. So Apple is doubling down, obviously, on this processor architecture. It is taking desktop and laptop computing and putting it on these CPUs. What the new products look like is, I'm trying to think of where are the parts on the graph, on the performance per watt graph, where Apple has not yet been able to play. So the ARM silicon or the Apple silicon, when it's powering an iPhone, powering an iPad, powering an Apple Watch, powering a iPod Touch, it's been very, very focused on, we can pack as much battery into this device as we possibly can. You look at the current iPod Pros, we are at desktop class performance on the iPad Pro and still have 10 hours of battery life
Mm.
in that form factor. What could we do which would, when our power and thermal budget is not constrained by a fanless device that somebody has to carry around? Yes, we're going to deliver laptops. Yes, we're going to deliver all-in-one desktops. But what does an ARM Mac Pro look like? 32 cores, 64 cores, 128 cores? There's no, in a machine that has a fan, that has multiple fans, that has thermal management, there's no reason. Like, if you can consume 100 watts of power and clear that heat in a Mac that's not running an Intel chip which consumes most of that power budget and most of that thermal budget, but with ARM chips that are designed to give you incredible performance per watt, incredible performance for that power that you have, I think you're talking about, you're getting back toward that desktop supercomputer idea that we had with the G5, where Apple's performance story, no longer coupled to the Intel and AMD architecture and that roadmap and the x64 architecture,
Hmm.
Apple's performance story transforms. So VR headsets, maybe. Immersive computing, a computer that is essentially just the projector and is working off a wall surface or or a plain Surface, maybe, or a Mac Pro that is truly, at AI or at supercomputer levels, and the applications you could drive with that, maybe. But but then the flip side of it is, what does Apple think it can sell? Apple knows it can sell $2,000 laptops, $1,000, micro laptops, $1,000 phones. What is something Apple can sell for 1,000, manufacture for $300, sell for $1,000,
Right.
generate services revenue on top of for $13 billion a quarter, that is going to be enabled by this expansion of the performance per watt graph into yet uncovered territory. That's what I wonder about. And I think it's not impossible that the sort of desktop supercomputing and workstation style approach is part of that.
See, that's almost a given to me. I really was thinking about going to the thing that you were saying about what can you sell. I mean, the only thing I can think of again is the AR glasses, and I don't know enough about chip architecture or any of that stuff to know why Apple Silicon would help with that. But that's sort of what I assume their next thing is going to be. When you say VR, Brian Chaffin said a few months ago when he was on this show, he doesn't see them putting out goggles. Like, basically the kind of thing that you would need for VR, unless you have like an AR VR combo that would be lenses that would go, totally opaque so they could show you a virtual world instead of one that's like, your world with, information overlaid. I don't know what that thing is. I mean, I think I'm as tied into the idea of Apple getting into VR glasses as Gene Munster used to be into Apple getting into a full-on television. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
there are all kinds of possibilities. PA Semi used to make stuff for the military. I want to say they were actually systems that ran in some of the military's tanks. So obviously, I mean, this could have tremendous value in the stuff that Apple is doing in automobiles. Except I don't see them getting into cars, just because I don't. I can't see that. Although I could see that almost easier than them getting into VR headsets, because a VR headset is clunky and weird looking, and to make it look nice, it would have to be ridiculously expensive.
But think about the power consumption.
Mm-hmm.
Like Google Glass is sort of this minimalist AR,
Mm-hmm.
giving you a small piece of the visual field, and being voice driven. Apple goggles, or Apple Glass, whatever they end up calling it. If they talk to Corning, they'll definitely call it Apple Glass.
Right.
It does need to be able to give you that augmentation experience, like
Mm-hmm.
Siri gains a face or gains an emoji, and is there able to give you those tips or that information you need. But you also have to be able to switch it from, like, just like this iPhone 11 that I'm holding, it's a productivity device, but it's also an entertainment device. I need to be able to watch movie. Whatever Apple sells me, I need to be able to watch, morning show in 4K. Like,
Right.
that's mandatory. So there is going to be a way to go from day mode to night mode on this, whatever this product is, so that I get, stereoscopic 4K or flat 4K as a viewing experience. Great sound, great visuals. I don't need to buy a TV unless I want to watch with people. If I want to watch by myself, this is the extension of my iPad or my phone. And I think, in fact, if you say, well, the only way this plays video, like stereo 4K video, is if you're pairing it with a device, like,
Mm-hmm.
it'll do the augmentation stuff solo, but you're going to offload the processing power for the full motion video to something else. So it'll pair, just like your watch performs better or does more when it's paired to your phone.
Right.
Your goggles do more when they're paired to your phone as well. But I mean, I think that the clunkiness goes back to not only the screen technology, which Apple's bought a number of companies that have both the 3D sensing and the microscopic display capabilities, but it's also the battery. How much battery do you need in these glasses to give you an hour or 2 hours of viewing time? Do you put them in a case, like your AirPods? Do you dock them to charge when you're not using them? Apple has been extraordinarily successful with this form factor with the AirPods form factor, where in fact the battery life of the headphones themselves is not all that long, but it's so easy to just put it in the case and have it charge when you don't need it for a minute. And in fact, you have to. Like, you don't want to leave them lying around. This is where you store them. So I think you take AirPod style charging and Apple Silicon into the goggles, and you could see something really spectacular. No pun intended.